Welcome to the Moonflower Path podcast. This space is for the highly sensitive, the creatives, the earth-loving, the caregivers, the weirdos, the feelers, the change makers, and dreamers of the world. Here, we are all about guiding you to trust your body intuition so you can find home and shift culture. Through the exploration of somatic practice, self-care, and seasonal ritual, my hope is that you will be inspired to be in harmony with yourself and in a dance with the earth. I'm your host, Carolyn, and I'm so honored and grateful to be here with you today. Hello, Moonflower, and welcome back. Before we get into today's episode, I feel like it's time to start officially saying some things. As I mentioned in the very first episode, the name of this podcast is going to be the new name of the business. And with that transformation will come a brand new space within which you can find cozy somatic self-care supports as the lovely moonflower that you are. I'm hard at work on the back end, creating the things, writing the things, recording the things, and planning the things, like doing so much new to make this space as cozy as possible. So this is just officially say, please stick around, stay tuned, and know that the doors will open to the Moonflower Path community space in a few months. All folks who are registered to the newsletter will be the first to know. The first step is the website is going to become live most likely at the end of March. I'm trying to not put too many dates on it because I'm a free-flowing spirit over here, but the website will most likely be available at the end of March, and then the doors will open sometime in April, and then programming will most likely start in May. That is if all goes to plan. So if you are registered to the newsletter, then you will be the first to know when all of the things happen, and you will be offered exclusive founding member bonuses. So I want you to be there because I am so proud of this new space, and I know it will profoundly support you. Okay, so for today's episode, this is the episode. Like, if there's one episode I know will support you, light you up, and make you feel ready to learn more about your intuition, your body, your connection to spirit through nature, and just feel all the cozy vibes, it's this one. I've been really excited to record this episode because I am obsessed with the moon. So I'll share with you what my take is on lunar living, how you might find support from this somatic ritual, as well as share a few resources you can turn to expand upon this episode. Last week's seasonal living episode and this one are very purposefully scheduled one after the other because there are so many similarities and correlations we can make between the two. But also, like last week's episode, this will be an overview, and consider this again the opening of the doors to another room filled with conversations we will continue to expand upon for years to come. So let's connect with the moon today, shall we? The reason this episode is called Lunar Living is because I wholeheartedly believe that turning to the moon and infusing her energies and lessons and themes into everyday life, especially as a highly sensitive, creative, and earth-loving soul, i.e. a moonflower, can help you come home to yourself. So as much as you could just nerd out on the moon and dip your toe into these practices, you can also let them become a core part of your life. Whatever works for you. So take what feels right, be curious, and leave whatever doesn't land. The teachings I share in today's episode are a mixture of lessons I've received from many wise and skilled teachers, artists, witches, as well as through my own experience in my own body and life. I'll source some folks at the end of the episode and in the show notes for your own perusing. Lunar living is the act of not only acknowledging the inherent cyclical nature of your being, but of actually honoring it, being in flow with it. So not only saying like, yes, this is a reality, but actually like dedicating yourself to really infusing that into the way in which you move through your life. As we learned in the exploration of seasonal living, everything in nature is a cycle, from the seasons to the life of any living being to the journey of every planet in the cosmos. And you, darling, are of nature. You are made of the same building blocks that built the sun, the moon, the stars, the plants, the animals, and the elements. Not only that, but there is an energy that connects all of us that holds a wisdom that we cannot fully comprehend. Just as one learns through the practice of mindfulness and meditation, at the very core of who you are a divine being. A spiritual being moving through a human experience, right? We've heard that quote before. You are not the labels that others put on you or that you put on yourself. You are not even the body that you move through. You are not the thoughts that move through your mind. You are not the experiences that you've moved through. Yes, those are all very much parts of who you are, of your experience, but you, at your very core, are the wise observer, both experiencing and witnessing your experience. Okay, so wow, what does all of that have to do with lunar living? Well, it's simply a loving reminder that that deep core part of you is connected to consciousness and spirit and are intimately connected with everything. And to feel and deeply know that offers you the opportunity to let all things be a teacher of lessons about yourself. So today is an invitation to turn to the moon as a teacher to learn more about how you might connect deeper with yourself, letting parts of yourself that you've kept hidden in the shadows, silenced, to gently come into the light and dance under the soft glow of the moon. To witness her cycles allows you to learn more about your own. The moon moves through a cycle that is roughly 28 days long. I like to refer to her as she because in my practice, and not only in my practice, this is something that is inherently part of the way that we've associated ourselves to the moon. She represents the embodiment of feminine energy, and the sun represents the masculine energy. This is not a conversation of gender because I'm queer and I'm here for gender fluidity. But to explore masculinity and femininity isn't inherently bad or harmful. It is harmful to believe that there are binaries, and we are here for the gender spectrum. Okay, so with that said, let me get back to it. She moves through broadly 4 different phases, with some phases in between along her journey around the earth. And the reason her illumination changes is because her positioning in accordance to the sun. The sun shifts how much of the sun rays are able to illuminate her. So with the moon moving around the earth and the earth is moving around the sun, that's a lot of movement that shifts things around every day. So how does all of this affect us and have anything to do with you? Well, there's like so many different reasons, but it's no mistake that that a month has roughly 30 days in it, right? Our ancestors used the cycle of the moon to actually help track time, and time, as much as time is a construct, time is also a helpful support for our human brains that like to have anchors. Also, on a very kind of like physical level, you are made up of about 60 to 70% water, depending on your age. And just as the moon's gravitational pull affects the tides, she also has effects on your body, on the water in your body. The water element is related to emotions in your body. It's no accident that folks associate a full moon with people going a little wild. The moon isn't necessarily closest to the earth at a full moon, but even just the brightness of her illumination can be a cause for stuff to come up. But on a more energetic level, each phase of the moon is associated with different themes, lessons, and energies. Where have these come from? Oh my goodness, like from so many different places. And it's all a bit difficult to pinpoint because this is thousands of years of knowledge, of lessons from many different cultures, many different mystics. But the more you learn about them, honestly, the more it all makes sense, at least to me. And you can use your own intuition and your own nurturing of your relationship with your body and the moon to create your own associations, lessons, and themes. But an overview, at least let's start with an overview of the phases. So there's the new moon, and kind of like the way that I'm always like envisioning when I'm explaining about it is that if you're kind of looking at me, then when the new moon is kind of at the top, and then as you circle toward, if you were to put your hand in front of you and you create this like circle with your hand, right? You circle around with your hand, and at the top is the new moon. And then if you move towards the right, once your hand gets to like the second, creates a quarter of the pie, then you make your way to the waxing moon, and then you come down to the base of the circle. That's the full moon, completely opposite to the new moon. And then the next quarter of the pie chart is the waning moon, and then we go back up, and then that's the circle. And I also like to distinctly recognize the dark moon, which is roughly in that last quarter, which is roughly about 3 days before the new moon. Within the waxing moon and the waning moon, there are multiple phases, but for the sake of today's overview, those we will explore another time. Now, the associations with each phase are fascinating because I just find it really truly illustrates all phases of a cycle. And I often use the cycle of the moon as the foundation of any cyclical teaching, even before the explorations of the seasons. So again, if you were to kind of look up and then do this circle with your hand, right? So if we were to think of the wheel of the year, and let's think of the 4 seasons. So you think at the top of the circle is the new moon, and that might be associated with winter. And then if you travel your hand down towards the right, over towards that first quarter, that would fall into the waxing moon, which might be associated with spring. And then you make your way down towards the base of the circle, and that's the full moon, which might be associated with summer. And then over towards the left of the circle, you make your way into the waning moon, which might be associated with fall. And then back up towards the top, and then that's your circle. You could also flip it, right? You could have the new moon at the base, and then your circle is moving towards the left again, so it's always moving clockwise. And you might have the full moon at the top of the circle. So, I mean, there's different ways to do it, but it's just interesting to see the correlation because the energies and the themes and the lessons are similar, and the tools might be similar to help navigate the different phases within the cycle. So let's get into the actual associations of the energies of the phase of a moon. So the new moon is obviously the beginning. It's the moment of quiet intention setting. You could set intentions that coincide with the astrological sign the moon finds herself in, or with what sign the moon finds herself in your birth chart, right? Like you can get like really technical, really flowery, really, really creative with it, or you can leave it be pretty simple. What is your focus for the upcoming cycle? So it's really the very beginning of the journey. The waxing moon is the time of embodied action. It's about taking those steps towards embodying your intention and moving through all that comes along with that, the more positive aspects and the challenging aspects. This can be a reminder that when doubt, challenge, procrastination, or hesitation comes up when you're moving through new stuff, it's an invitation to use the tools you have to stay the course. The full moon is associated with celebration, a time to practice gratitude, a time to recognize the progress you've made. It also acts as a reminder to let emotions flow, to give voice to your intuition, and to practice presence with your current experience. Right? Like when there's a lot going on and when you're in the thick of it, practicing presence instead of just disassociating, it's probably the best way to go. The waning moon is a descent. It's a reminder that there might be things to let go of or to sift through as you create new habits, new pathways, new things from your lunar intention. It's a representation of the importance to slow down, to turn inwards, and to recalibrate. Again, this is like rough overview. There's so much more symbolism to be found in each phase, but I feel like you might have gotten the picture, or I hope you have at least. And then, like I mentioned, I like to recognize the dark moon, which is this like fifth part of the phase. It's a tinier part of the cycle, rather, but it's really important. The dark moon is a reminder of death, of that things come to an end, and that within that we must rest. We can practice total being and letting yourself be in the void of nothingness before a new cycle, right? All life comes out of darkness. Now you'll notice that I very intentionally used words like, quote, act as a reminder or symbolizes for each phase explanation instead of this is a time for this, because I'm not here to say when the moon is in a certain phase, you must do whatever is associated with that phase. I mean, honestly, that's just forcing you to follow another abstract belief or way of living. And we do that enough, right? Like we move through enough abstract schedules that other folks have decided that that's just the way we should move through life. And that's the opposite of what we're here for, right? We're here to find alignment, to find flow, to tune into living life in the ways that suits our needs and our bodies and our desires. So instead, I invite you to use the map of the moon as a lesson on cycles, of the ways all things move through cycles and what can be learned in each part of the cyclical journey. To notice what phases you find yourself in and to learn how you might navigate those phases with the same tools you might in that associated lunar phase. It's a recognition that you aren't built to be doing all the damn time and that there is space in your life and in your body to also let go, to rest, to dream, and to take things slow, amongst many other things. I think one of my favorite parts about lunar living is the grace it offers me to take things slow. I have found it helpful to let the reality that because there are multiple lunar phases in a year, it allows me to break down a goal into manageable steps, or that I can focus on a different area of my life every new phase. It also is helpful to create distinction between goals and intentions, right? Intentions have this like softer approach, and the softness of the moon is a reminder of the fact that like maybe we don't need to always be creating goals, but maybe there is a shift that can happen around creating intentions. It also reminds me that I can focus on a different area of my life every new phase. It acts as an anchoring reset every 28 days. It lets me flush out intentions from start to finish. It reminds me of the importance to celebrate my small wins. It reminds me of the beautiful role my intuition plays in my life and in my body. For earth-loving folk, the moon can be such a muse for awe, wonder, and gratitude for all that the natural world provides for us. Literally anytime I see the moon now, when she's outside my window, or I'm gazing up at her on a nighttime walk, or I catch a glimpse of her when I'm feeling stressed out driving in the car, she brings me back to gratitude, to love, to presence. I always say hello to her now. Hello, moon. And over time, she's become almost a friend, a companion, a guardian, a reminder that I'm not alone and that none of us are alone. And that she also needs us too, and the natural world needs us too. Like, I'm sorry, but the fact that NASA is wanting to build a permanent moon base is just so ick. She needs us to keep her wild because she reminds us of our own wildness. For creative folk, it can get really obvious real quick that you either go through ridiculous ups and downs creatively, or that you go through entire phases of inspiration and lack of inspiration or motivation. At least I do. So to explore lunar living can be a beautiful way to offer focus to your creative side, or to let it be a creative outlet. To create according to the phases of the moon is such a magical way of being in a dance with her. For highly sensitive souls, lunar living is such a slower, intuitively led, feelings infused, nurturing, dark in like a comforting way, quieter, magical way to move through one's life. It places your body at the forefront because her light affects the way our bodies move. It's a recognition of our need to tend to our body when it needs to rest, to move our body when it's feeling all the things, to place a hand on the heart and say, okay, Moon, we're listening. Let's do this together. She's a companion along the Moonflower's path. So this has been a really broad overview of my take on lunar living, what you can find in association with the lunar phases, how lunar living might support you on your self-care journey, and as promised, I'd like to end with some resources. So firstly, I cannot thank Sarah Faith Gottesdiener enough. Her work and her contribution to furthering lunar living teachings is incredible. If I could have her as a guest on this podcast, that would be amazing. Maybe let's manifest it now. Her book, The Moon Book, is one I refer to almost on a daily basis. Her podcast, Moonbeaming, is my top listened to podcast. She's queer, she's highly sensitive, she's a feminist, and I'm sure you'll be able to learn lots from her. Dana DuPont, I'm not actually quite sure how to say her last name, is an artist and a teacher on the moon map. Her weekly newsletter is packed with ways you can create with the moon, and she is passionate about art journaling with the moon. Love her work. The Moon Calendar app has been a foundational resource for me when not only learning more about the phases, but distinctly inspired me to create my own lunar ritual in my own life, which then expanded out to a weekly lunar series that I teach in this community. So it's a great place to start. I think it costs like $4 a year or something. And lastly, Embodied Astrology is really a fantastic space. So they don't only talk about the moon. The founder, Renee Sills, talks about all things somatic astrology, but I love referring to their teachings to help learn more about the astrological science the moon is moving through and how that can be infused into my own lunar rituals. So these are all resources that I use heavily to support my teachings and my classes. So if you'd like to learn more, then you can click on those links in the description, not in the description box. So these are all resources that I use heavily to support my teachings and my classes. And the reason that I like to share the resources that I use is because one of the core values of this business is honesty. And I will continue to be as honest and transparent with you of showing to you where I am sourcing my information. One, because it's just good to kind of like show my cards and know where I'm taking from and where I'm learning from, but also it offers you an opportunity to expand your own knowledge and go and find these different teachers and take in more of what they have to say, just to add to your medicine basket, right? So if you'd like to learn more, definitely stick around, because the lunar series that I mentioned that I teach will take a pretty prominent place in the Moonflower Path community space when it launches, and you won't want to miss out. But in the meantime, I hope this episode serves as an inspiration on how you might find support through connecting with the moon. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Moonflower Path podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn, and ways that you can find more support from me and this cozy community are all found in the show notes. Please consider rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast with a friend. Those are the best ways to show your support for this free and accessible resource. Wishing you a gentle rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting again with you very soon.